Wow, we're here.
It's great to be here, isn't it? It's fantastic.
Amazing. It's really amazing. I mean, I think we were just saying this is probably the first time we've ever represented our country at anything.
Oh, yes, I'm feeling very patriotic at all, indeed. Well, we've got a looking good you two from, I think, from Craig Whelan there. So thank you very much for that, indeed.
Craig and Pilar, who just did a brilliant job.
Yes.
Couldn't understand a lot of what they were saying, but it was lovely to hear a bit of Spanish, even though I don't actually speak Spanish. So what to expect over the next 55 minutes or so from us? Well, first of all, we've got to say thank you to Dave for inviting us to be on here, and to Steve for doing such a brilliant job at getting so many people together. And I think we're probably, are we hour 16 or something? I think we're about
halfway through, aren't we?
Yeah, I think you're about halfway through. So, and it is fantastic to be here. And as we were saying, we are talking to you from our studio office in Suffolk, in a little market town in Suffolk in England, which is in East Anglia. So
if you go down in England on the right hand side,
you're looking at a map.
As you're looking at a map, there's a big blob on the right hand side which is called East Anglia, and we are the bottom part of East Anglia.
Yeah, sort of
place called Suffolk, and we're from a little town called Woodbridge in Suffolk.
Yeah.
And it's 3 p.m. in the UK.
It is. Oh, that reminds me.
3 p.m. in the UK today, so that can only mean one thing. Because we're British, we are taking afternoon tea. Jeeves has just brought it to us just a few moments ago, and we're very happy. I think it's 7 a.m. in the USA, isn't it?
Yes, well, depending on where you are in the USA. Pacific time?
Oh, yes.
Right? Am I saying the right thing? Yeah. So,
whereabouts are people from in the world today? We'd love to hear your comments in the comments section.
Look, Kathryn and Julian, we're not hearing you through those two mics, so can you move them out of the way?
Ah, right. Okay. Is that better?
Don't worry. Oh, Daniel says, don't worry fixing it. It's fine.
Ah, okay.
Are we using the mics then?
Are we using the mics?
Yes.
Can we have maybe we'll get some.
Hopefully.
No, we're not using the mics.
All right. What are we using then? Like, where's it coming from? Is it coming out of our computer then?
Your earpods.
Your earpods.
Okay. Is it just coming out of your earpod?
God, I hope not. If it is, it's going to be.
I can still hear you through the internal mic. It's fine. It sounds great.
Oh, Pilar, that's so kind.
Thank you, Pilar,
very much.
Well, you're podcasters. We've got to be able to cope with these things, haven't we?
Yeah.
In all their glory.
Maybe we didn't set it up right. We thought we were using the right mics, but obviously.
Anyway, let's talk about what we're going to talk about.
Forget talking about us. As long as you can hear us, that's the main thing. So yeah, what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk about our podcast journey, really, about a bit of the good, the bad, and the ugly, I would say.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. That was a Hollywood movie, wasn't it? I believe. Yul Brynner, I seem to remember. You're going to do the
theme tune. No, the thing is, right, actually, we're not going to talk very much about the bad and the ugly, because that makes it sound like there's lots of bad things to talk about, which there aren't with podcasting, of course. But
it is a better title.
But it is a better title, yeah. And the thing is that we just want to be honest about what we've done in podcasting, how we found it. And most of it is really positive, like we've been hearing from all the fantastic guests that have been on today. Just hoping we can live up to what other people have done.
Of course we can.
But, we want to be honest about our experience. And so we're going to share that, our story about how we got into podcasting, what we've learned in the process, and also what it can do for you. What it can do for you, what it's done for us. What it can do for you, what it can do for us.
Yeah, what it can do for your business or your cause or indeed your hobbies. And if you haven't got started, a few pointers for getting started. Plus, we'd welcome any live comments, any comments you have in the live chat about what podcasting has done for you along the way. Exactly. So maybe we should start with who we are, should we?
Yeah, we are. So I'm Kathryn Bryant.
And I'm Julian. And we have to be quite close to each other here.
I know.
We have to sort of cuddle up, really.
I'll tell you something.
It's a family show, you know that.
It's quite a good job that we're married.
Yes, it's a good job we're both slim.
Yeah, so we are married, even though we do have different surnames. You might have noticed that. Bryant and Illman.
Yeah, I'm Julian Illman. And together, I think probably it would be fair to say we have been in the business of education for large parts of our life, haven't we?
Yeah.
Between us, we've probably got about 35 years of experience. I know we don't look old enough in the area of education and training. But it was a few years ago, wasn't it, that we decided that we wanted to do something a little bit different. We decided we wanted some form of change. I think sometimes you get it to a point in your life. We were both in very successful careers. I was a senior lecturer at a College of Further Education, and then I was working on a particular project in higher education at the University of Suffolk, what used to be called the University Campus Suffolk. Is now called the University of Suffolk. And I think we both of us were thinking about a little bit about change and getting a little bit more of our own time, really, weren't we?
Yeah, I mean, you know, probably some of you people who are watching, hopefully there's someone out there listening, you might recognise it because we've been in our roles for quite a while. Oh, look, somebody used to be stationed
Andrew
at RAF
Kosowski
Woodbridge.
used to be stationed at RAF Woodbridge in the mid-80s.
Oh, yes, we had many good nights at Bentwaters, at the air base at Bentwaters.
My father, Andrew, used to play the organ at Woodbridge and Bentwaters base.
Yeah, he did. So that was amazing. Anyway, we digress, but it was great to have that. Lovely to meet you, Andrew. Yes, so like maybe a lot of people feel, we got to a point where although we were doing well in our work, and I was doing well, I was working for the government, I was a civil servant, but working on education and education funding and training and policy and things like that. I came to a realization that I was spending a lot of my time driving around the country to meetings. I was pretty much at the whim of the work we did, was at the whim of a minister, as in a minister of state, minister of education, at their whim. And we got to a point where we decided we wanted to change things and that we wanted to have more stuff for ourselves, not as in more stuff, but as in more time.
More time in particular.
Yeah, more freedom, more control over how we spent our time. We want to be able to spend more time together. Do
you think it was also the fact we just purchased a very nice Labradoodle dog by the name of Dude, and we wanted to have a bit more time with him as well, didn't we?
He's actually lying down here behind us. He's always behind us when we're doing our podcast, so hopefully he's not going to start barking. And anyway, so we were looking for opportunities, and part of this was brought about through personal experiences that we were going through to do with family deaths and things like that, because there's nothing like losing your parents, particularly under not very nice circumstances, to make you appreciate, life is short and we all want to make the most of it. So, and it also helps you get clear about your priorities. So we were basically looking for opportunities to get out of what we were doing and do something for ourselves, which is what we ended up doing. And we basically set up something called brilliantliving.hq.com, which you can have a look at some point. And
essentially, Brilliant Living HQ is about helping people manage their minds.
Yeah.
We often find that we want to achieve certain things in our life, and often the things that get in our way are our own minds and our own mental thought processes. So we set up Brilliant Living HQ to help people take charge of their life and make change happen, in particular, helping them to achieve their goals and their aspirations and to live a life which they hopefully love. Hence the concept of brilliant living, living a brilliant life.
Yeah, and also to help people make the changes like we were making. And we saw it as an opportunity to bring together lots of the things that we've been working on over the years in teaching, in education, in training, in working with teams that we've had, in helping other people develop, but also develop ourselves, because we've always been really keen on personal development. And we were loving exploring all of these sort of things for ourselves, all these different, what we call mind management tools, things like goal setting, vision setting, things like meditation, mindfulness, affirmations, all that sort of thing. So that's what we did, and we set up this website.
And perhaps people out there might be thinking, well, what's this got to do with podcasting?
They probably have. So we were in the process of doing this and thinking through everything we want to do and getting to grips with doing stuff online.
Yeah, doing the website.
That was not our background at all. And we decided we were going to do everything ourselves.
It's probably about 3 years ago we're talking about here, isn't it? And we came across Pat Flynn, the Mr. Pat Flynn of the Smart Passive Income blog. I'm sure you know that already. And we were very intrigued with what he did. Obviously, his stuff resonated with the interest which we had in developing our own online business. And it sort of culminated in, well, probably at your suggestion, I suspect, us going to the very first inaugural one-day business breakthrough event in San Diego, wasn't it?
Yes.
About 3 years ago with Pat Flynn and Chris Ducker as well. So we flew 5,000 miles for a one-day business breakthrough event.
Mind you, we made sure we had a good holiday.
Yeah, we did on the way. Didn't we?
on the way. So anyway, while we were there, we were talking about being at livingHQ.com, but we met Jared Easley, who was
of Starve the Doubts,
who was helping out, and he sort of had his podcast not going very long, and he said to us, "You two have to have a podcast," and we're like, well, not really sure about that. Don't think we're quite at the right time and all this sort of thing. And then other people mentioned it as well over the course of the day, and we didn't do anything about it. But, you know, the seed was planted, I think. And then probably getting on for a year later, we got the website up and running. And at the same time, I was writing a book to bring together all the different ideas that we talked about on our podcast. We didn't have it yet on our website, and to create like a system out of them. So we've got a 10-step process, which I brought together in this book called Changeability: Manage Your Mind, Change Your Life. And it was getting to the point where it was getting nearer and nearer to actually print it, although it did take quite a long time to put together, I have to say. And in fact, it actually started off as Julian's book.
Yeah, that was that. I maybe ought to tell that little story. Originally, we were trying to sort of put together the system for what we thought was a concept of brilliant living, and we were trying to make it a logical sort of progressive framework. And I put together a document of probably about 16 or 17 pages, I think it was. And Kathryn was quite keen to sort of take it a little bit further and perhaps expand it a bit.
Yeah.
So she took my document, and after about 3 months, she'd periodically show me these things, and she'd say, "Oh, and this bit's written by you," and I could sort of see the bits which were highlighted in yellow of this.
I colour-coded them.
Or which were all the bits which I had originally put in, and then we left it another sort of month or two, and Kathryn was still writing the book, and it sort of got down to the stage where the yellow bits, my bits, were like very few and far between, and then we went in a little bit further still, and I think I got a few thes in, maybe the odd a.
Anyway, it went from being about 16 pages to being like 200 pages. So the book, and pretty much Julian had a few ands and those left, and that was it. So it was basically my book. And at the same time, of course, we were still in contact with Chris Ducker and Pat. And Chris Ducker happened to come to the UK, and we got together at a meetup in London. And he was just launching his book.
His book, Virtual Freedom, wasn't he?
And while he was doing it, he actually did a little mini series of podcast episodes, short podcast episodes about the chapters, or not about the chapters, but about what his book was about.
So he had his main show, which was still going, and at the same time, alongside this, you had this mini series, which was in part going towards promoting his book. Exactly.
And one of the things that had also happened at the same time, because a lot of things sort of came together all at once, like a perfect storm. Although perfect storm isn't good, is it?
That's good.
But a good perfect storm, if there is such a thing. And but Jared, in the meantime, had put us in touch with Isabella and Mike Russell, because they were getting something together called UK Podcasters, starting out a little group.
Mike and Isabella Russell, incidentally, are from Music Radio Creative, and they do a lot of the jingles for very many people.
I think they might have sponsored one of the prizes. Anyway, what happened was we actually went to this first inaugural meeting in a hotel in London. We all met up and talked about podcasting in the UK. Of course, we didn't have a podcast, but we went to a couple of these meetings, at which point Isabella said, "Look, come on, when are you actually going to have your podcast ready?" And we were like, well, we're just not quite sure what angle to take on it, because Brilliant Living HQ, it's so wide. There's so many things we could talk about, and we want to keep it manageable. So,
but to cut a long story short, we agreed to start this podcast by the first UK Podcasters Conference, didn't we?
Yes.
We made a sort of commitment to Isabella, rashly, I think, and maybe taking on board accountability, which is one of our steps in our book, actually, to be up and running by that particular stage.
Yeah.
So that was sort of where it led to, wasn't it?
It was. And so then when we met up with Chris and we're thinking about his thing, I said to Julian, well, why don't we do that with my book? So when we published the book at the end, or it was in the summer, at the end of the July, beginning of August time, why don't we just make a few podcast episodes to go with the book, because it'll help promote the book. If anyone listens to it, it'll help promote the book. And it'll also give us a framework to work within, so we don't just go off, talking about anything. And it'll give us something that's manageable. And we thought probably...
We normally thought initially that probably we would do around about 20 episodes.
Yeah.
The book had 10 clear sort of techniques within it, and we probably thought couple of episodes per techniques and a little bit on the theory which underpinned that. Now we have...
Which is what we do.
Yeah, which is where we're going to start. We're now actually 100 episodes later.
Yes.
And I think it would probably be fair to say that the Changeability podcast has taken on really a life of its own, hasn't it?
Yeah, it definitely has.
We certainly found we like podcasting, and we probably could say, hopefully we could say, that others have liked our podcast as well, haven't we?
Some people.
Yeah, well, certainly in the initial stages when you launch a podcast, as some of you may well know, I'm sure, there's an opportunity, a brief window. It's about 8 to 10 weeks in the UK when you can appear in New and Noteworthy. And we had...
well, there's some discrepancy whether it is actually 8 to 10, but anyway,
yeah,
you get a chance when you start,
8 to 10, approximately 8 to 10. And we had the opportunity to, obviously, we were hoping that we might do that. And we did feel a little bit, I have to say, a little bit like the Beatles when we launched our podcast, because relatively quickly, didn't we? We got to #1 in 4 categories: education, business, self-help. Can you remember the fourth one? And health, which was the one which we came under. We were the #1 self-help episode. At one stage, we had, I think it was 4 episodes, a bit like the Beatles, 4 top 10 singles, 4 episodes in the top 10. So it was an incredibly pleasing time. We were above, obviously, you think that if you know that our podcast is about self-help or personal development, we're above the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is probably one of the biggest self-help books in terms of a podcast. Awaken the Giant Within with Tony Robbins. I hardly
it was quite surreal.
The other thing which really made me laugh, I think, at the stage, we were above Bang Radio and Sex, Hypnosis and NLP. So it's possibly the only time that changeability has been better than sex. I don't know whether that is the case or not. But sure, am I allowed to say that? Probably am.
Hopefully. Anyway, so the thing is, we launched it and it went really well. And to be honest, quite a lot of that was to do with our fellow UK podcasters who really helped us. We helped each other in writing reviews.
Yeah, rallied around each other and supported each other, didn't we?
Supporting each other and trying to promote each other. And we'll talk a bit about podcasting in the UK in a minute and why that is so important for us here in particular. So that was sort of up and running, and it was doing okay. I mean, when we say we were like these #1s, they were in our categories, not overall. And also the other thing to say is we're talking about UK iTunes here, not the US iTunes, which is obviously much bigger and got much more competition. But even so, it was really pleasing and it was really encouraging to do it. And then we sort of carried on, and and like we say, we've now carried on, and we're now up to our 100th episode. And what happened was we became more and more involved in sort of podcast communities and things like that. And a year after we'd launched, we actually were nominated for an award at the New Media Europe Awards for UK podcasting, and we were really absolutely thrilled because we actually won an award.
Yeah, we did, for the best self-help podcast. That was in September 2015, wasn't it?
So a year ago.
At New Media Europe.
So that was really good, and we really felt, yeah, this is fantastic, and it's all all going very nicely. But at the same time, I was becoming aware, well, hard not to be aware of the massive, thank you, Scott, thank you.
Oh, bless you.
That's really, really kind of you. And it's very, very nice to see
so many people.
some other people in here. And Mark, hello, fellow UK podcasters, thank you. And Jessica there from the Marvellous She podcast. Well, I'm just going to go on to talk about lady podcasters here, because about a year after we were into the Changeability podcast, I'd been thinking for a long while, actually, about how there weren't so many women in podcasting. And I think probably it was, as far as we could tell, it was probably around about 80% men at the time. And in fact, I'd been thinking about this for a long time. I actually bought a domain name called podcastdivas.com before we'd even started our podcast. But I just felt that I didn't have the experience or the confidence to just start a podcast at that point on my own about women in podcasting.
So
and around that time, She
sort of
Podcast was starting as well, which was absolutely fantastic and it was a brilliant show. So I decided that I was going to have this. It was like going to be my little hobby, my side project, and started a show called Podcast Divas. And basically it's about putting fabulous female podcasters in the spotlight. So on the show, I talk to female podcasters and talk to them about their experiences of podcasting, how they got into it, what they've learned. But really, really important. I do.
Everybody knows you, Jessica.
Jessica, I actually did meet you. In fact, I think you might even have bought me a drink. I came to a She Podcast meetup at New Media Expo last year.
I ought to say, Scott, you should meet Mike and Isabella Russell from Music Radio Creative. They are awesome people.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, and in fact, I ran it by you, the idea of Podcast Divas, and you were like, yeah, that's good, because some people didn't like the name, but you were encouraging, so thanks for that, Jessica. So anyway, so I started this towards the end of last year, and it's not like thank you. We are indeed. We are. Well, you and us, you definitely are. Sorry, I'm talking to Jessica because she's in the chat and she said yes, of course, Podcast Divas is a great name, and we are Podcast Divas. So the idea really is behind it is that I think that a lot of women have got such great podcasting stories to tell, and it's about what I also talk to them about. What they've got from it, not only from a business perspective, because it's amazing the things that people can get from it business-wise, and we'll talk about some of that in a minute.
We'll talk about some of those in a minute.
But also in terms of, when I always say, what's it done for you personally, podcasting? And almost every single guest I've had on almost has said about making them more confident, that they feel much
developing
more
their own
confident.
inner voice. Do you think?
Yeah, it's about getting their voices out there, and that's what we all want to do, isn't it? We want to be able to get our voices out there, and we want to encourage other people to get their voices out there and get their message out there. So that was the idea behind Podcast Divas. I haven't been as consistent with it. In fact, I've broken all the rules that, I tend to talk about, you need to be consistent, to a weekly or a fortnightly show, keep on it. I've sort of broken quite a few of those rules, it's fair to say. But I do really enjoy it when I do it. I love it, and I love doing the interviews.
It's been very well received as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has been well received. So that's the sort of, they're really our two podcasts. We've got the Changeability podcast, which is sort of more to do with our business, and helping us get the word out about what we do. And then there's Podcast Divas, which, maybe one day it will have some business impact, but at the moment it's sort of a hobby, really.
Perhaps we ought to talk a little bit, before we go into the good, the bad and the ugly of podcasting, a little bit about the state of podcasting in the
I like that, Pilar. There are no rules in podcasting. That's one of the things we're going to say, actually. Yeah, one of the fantastic things.
To give people an overview of what podcasting is like in the UK today. As Kathryn mentioned earlier, it would be fair to say that podcasting isn't as large as obviously something like the States, but it is, so it's a bit behind, but it is catching up, and catching up fast, perhaps.
Yeah.
One of the frustrations perhaps for an individual or a couple like us who are starting in podcasting is that the podcasting network and iTunes in particular in the UK is very much dominated by some very large organisations who have considerably more clout behind their media and their marketing than perhaps a small-scale business like ours would. So it's dominated, for example, by something like the BBC, who put a lot of their programmes directly onto podcasts for people to listen to. And
which
obviously
is
the
sort
US,
of good and bad, because it's good from the point of view that the BBC have probably done more than anything else in Great Britain or the UK to promote podcasting, because people know that they can hear their Woman's Hour or whatever program it is on a podcast.
Yes.
So that's, for a lot of people, that is their introduction to podcasting. They've heard the word even if they don't know what it was. And that's the other thing I'd say. It's becoming much more mainstream, especially after Serial, which, you know, was really popular here as everywhere. But and there was actually a Radio 4 program at the end of last year called In Pod We Trust, which talked about a lot of different types of podcasting, but even they talked a lot about American podcasting. No, we haven't got anything against American podcasters. We think you're amazing. We love you, and we love the States and coming to the States. But it's just that sometimes we feel a little bit left behind. And one of the other things I'd say is that, like with Google and all the developments that are going on in podcasting, and this isn't a whinge, this is just a fact,
an observation,
that we're always left behind. So everything always starts in the States. So we weren't able to sign up for, you know, the Google thing or lots of other things. It always comes in late.
And the dominance of organisations like the BBC mean that when you're looking on iTunes, or when somebody who's new to podcasting is looking on iTunes, the real estate, which is the most important places when you first look on iTunes, tend to be dominated by BBC or US-based podcasts, which makes it sometimes a little bit harder to get your voice heard, I think.
But we don't want to be on a journey, because we're not. Because
definitely.
The flip side of that is it is really popular. Maybe we should stop comparing ourselves to other countries, UK behind US, Spain behind UK, and look at what each country does
Absolutely.
best. Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, because it actually means that it's all to play for.
Yes, definitely.
And it is really exciting times here in Europe and in the UK. We are still part of Europe.
Nobody mentioned Brexit. I think we mentioned it once, but I think we got away with it.
Yeah, we'll still be part of the continent. Anyway, so so we just want to say that, you know, we are, watch out, because that's fine, Jessica. Enjoy talking to your client. Lovely to see you in there. Yeah, that we're excited here now in the UK, because we know that we've got a big audience out there of people in Britain and in Europe who still don't necessarily know about podcasts, still don't listen to podcasts. So that means there's lots of people we've got to talk to and to go after.
So maybe we should move on then to have a little bit of an exploration of what we've learned in terms of the benefits and the opportunities presented by podcasting and the reality of what it's like to be involved in podcasting on a regular basis. This might be, I recognise that there may well be two types of audience. There might be people who already have a podcast which is up and running, and please feel free to join in with any comments. It's very interesting. If we're not able to answer each particular one, it is interesting to see for others what you might consider might be some of the benefits and opportunities inherent in podcasting. But there's also people who might be interested in starting podcasting for the first time. So this is partly about that process as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think we're probably emphasising a little bit more the business side of things.
Yes, because that's how we got into it, to be fair. But all these things that we mentioned are exactly the same for whatever your podcast is about. You know, it could be that you want to promote your hobby, your interests, I don't know, your cause, whatever it is. It's still all... It's also relevant, because one of the things that we found, and talking to other people who've got podcasts as well, wherever they are in the world, is that we found podcasting has just been brilliant for helping us and other people to define and to amplify what it is they do. So in terms of like if you've got a business, then it's fantastic to be able to add a podcast to it if it's appropriate, because what it does is it makes you define the message that you're putting out there, and it helps people to actually really know what it is that you're about.
I think the other thing I would add to that is it very much helps to personalize your brand as well.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're like a small business like us, it gives people an opportunity to get to know you and to get to know your authenticity or otherwise. So it's certainly
like that word.
Authenticity. Do you not like it? Why is that?
Well, I don't know. It just was authenticity. I don't know why I don't like it, but I know I like what it means.
I think what I meant is that it's possible sometimes to stand behind the glitz and glamour of a website. It can be very well designed and it can look all encompassing, but sometimes the podcast gives people the opportunity to know you better, don't it?
Yeah, I think that is probably one of the absolute most key reasons why, not that we necessarily thought that when we started our podcast, to be fair, we were thinking of it in terms of promoting the book.
Peeler makes a very interesting point. I just read that here. It's not just about raising awareness, but about defining what you're about.
Yeah.
And she says she agrees, and that's rarely mentioned, I think, in that sense of it.
So I think that, so what was I saying? One of the things we were thinking when we first started was we were really using it as a piece of content marketing, if you that's another term that some people don't like, some people do. But the idea that it was a different way to get our message across, because we wanted to almost broadcast in what we were doing, and look, this is where we are, look at us, we're here and everything, and in a helpful way to people. I don't mean like in a way that's just all about us, but I mean but we were thinking of it more like that, rather than the fact that actually what it really allowed people to do was to get to know us as people. Humanizing your brand. Humanizing your brand, isn't it? Yeah, especially
giving it a voice, giving it some personality.
Yeah.
And if you've listened to our podcast, you know that we do go off on one now and again, don't we?
Yeah.
So I think it does really help to show the voice and the personality really behind the brand. That's really what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it is. And of course, it might not be a brand. It might be whatever it is you want to do. It definitely humanizes it and gives it that personality. And for us, we were, I don't know, when I started writing blogs, I come from like writing academic papers or papers for government type or teachers and things like that. And it took me a while. In fact, I still probably haven't got it very well down, if I'm totally honest, to really sort of find my blog voice, like a conversation, developing my voice. And I always wanted to make sure everything was grammatically correct and everything had to follow on logically and all this sort of thing. And I think what podcasting did for us is it cuts out that. And so whereas some of my blogs might have, especially at first, might have been a little bit dull. Maybe dull isn't the right
word.
More
factually based, possibly, yeah. I wouldn't say dull, definitely.
I think when you're talking, people are getting it as it really is, aren't they? And they may not like it as it really is, or they may like it as it really is, but they're getting much more of you. And I think for a lot of people especially people who are operating mainly online, that is a fantastic way to get yourself across better.
And they physically get to hear your voice, don't they?
Yeah.
They are able to ascertain whether you're being authentic about what you're talking about. And I think those things combined help to gently break down any trust barriers which somebody might have initially when they're first coming in contact with either you or your business. And if you're thinking about a podcast in terms of business, from its business point of view, people do tend to do business with people who they trust. Yeah. So there is that aspect, which I think is
I think that's
worth
very
mentioning,
true.
isn't it?
And then the other thing, of course, about having a podcast is when we first started our podcast, the first I think 11 or 12 episodes were us on our own, and then we thought, it'd be really fun to have a guest. We never have a guest, so we had a guest. Chris Marr was our first guest. I remember that from Content Marketing Academy,
talking about goals,
from Scotland, talking about goals. And so then that sort of highlights. So now what we do is we have a guest every few shows. We don't, it's not that not a sort of set defined thing, but we have a guest every few shows. It's still probably the majority of shows are the two of us. But, you know, anyone who has a podcast who has guests on will know that is just really absolutely one of the best ways of, increasing your networks, getting to know people. Of course, it can be used to establish your credibility and expertise, because you can interview the experts and then sort of get a little bit of association,
deferred association in certain senses, isn't
with
it?
That, from it, and we found that works really good. But I've also found that with some of the women that I've interviewed, or a lot of the women I've interviewed on Podcast Divas, the way that their podcasts have opened up fantastic business opportunities to them. And it's not always about the money, even. It's about the support and the networks and all that sort of thing. And then the things that can come off that sort of unexpectedly, really, or because of your podcast.
It gives you opportunities to open doors in your industry, which you may not necessarily be able to open directly yourself. And for us, what sort of things has it given us? I mean, in terms of some of the stuff which we've done as a result of our podcast, we've certainly been interviewed on the BBC, BBC radio interview, as a direct result of somebody listening to the podcast and then subsequently reading your book. You got invited down to London, didn't you?
Yes.
To talk in the financial centre of
the world.
Really, almost, isn't it? At Shell UK, didn't you?
Yeah, I got to do the closing keynote speech at their Women in IT conference at the end of last year, which was incredible because, I can't even begin to tell you, when I saw the agenda and all the other people who were talking, they were all directors of Shell. There was Professor Susan
Baroness,
Greenfield.
Baroness?
Baroness Professor Susan Greenfield, who's got doctorates from 35 universities around the world and all this sort of thing. And then I was doing the closing keynote. And it was all because of the podcast, because their theme of the day was about change. And they said to me, could you talk about change? And yes, of course, that's what we talk about every week. And look at Craig. We love Craig. He's just said something really nice on there about how we definitely help many people make positive change in their lives with changeability, and that's no small thing.
Absolutely, absolutely, Craig.
Yeah, so that was an incredible opportunity. I would never have been there. They wouldn't even have known who I was.
No, that's right.
Been for the podcast, and then I got to speak at this event about how to thrive in times of change from a sort of personal and a corporate perspective, which was fantastic.
And subsequently, we've been invited to speak at IBM, where we presented to some business groups about the power of podcasting. And obviously today, we're talking on International Podcast Day, which is a huge, huge privilege as a result of the contacts which we've made. I was reminded yesterday, one of my friends was talking about this concept in personal development of when a butterfly flaps its wings, the repercussions are not necessarily realised but are felt throughout the world. And I thought that was a very interesting thing. You know, you start on something like podcasting, and then the ramifications of that, you're not ever fully aware. The award which we received, the talking at Shell, the talking at IBM, the BBC radio interview, the fantastic people who will go on to the communities and networks which we've made as a result of that.
And we've got to talk to some of our local business associations, haven't we? Digital business associations.
And in terms of, do you want to, I mean, in terms of your own book?
Oh, yes.
We ought to perhaps say that, which was our original objective in it. We said that the podcast took on a life of its own, but do you want to say a little bit about your book?
As a result, well, I can't say it's totally all down to the podcast, but the podcast has made a massive difference. And the book, my Changeability book, got to be a #1 bestseller in 2 or 3 categories on Amazon in their categories.
In the US?
It got to be number 2 in the US, number 1
in Australia.
Love Australia. Love Canada.
We love Australia.
Got #1 there. Top 10 in the UK. So and that was all helped by the podcast. I'm not saying it's totally down to it, but it really, really has helped us get it over.
Yippee for spreading the word about podcasting to less usual suspects. Who are the less usual suspects?
Well, I suppose the sort of businesses. And
yes, that's true. Yeah,
things like that. So
let's talk about then a little bit about communities and networks, because obviously.
Well, also the other thing is that we've. It's not just about business, is it? It's about the people. And I have to say that we've just met so many fantastic people through podcasting, both here in the UK, but also when we went to New Media Expo last year. And
online as well.
And online. We went to
many people who would almost consider as friends who we've not actually met in person. Well, you know what I mean. We don't know them face to face.
Yeah, I know.
That's what I was trying to say. Yeah,
but yeah, and so that's been fantastic. And then obviously you can. So then you, of course, then become, part of this bigger network, and that's really fantastic. The other thing I think I'd say about podcasting for us is that where it sort of wins out over maybe some blog posts and things like that is that people have actually chosen to talk to you, and you're talking directly, much more directly to your audience, and that they've chosen to spend time with you and to actually listen to you. And
it's a very intimate form, isn't it? I mean, obviously people take, Chris Ducker talks about welcoming you into my earbuds, doesn't he, or whatever, or into my ears. No, I don't like the sound of it. It sounds a bit like I don't know, a bit of earwax or something. But certainly it's about people choosing to spend time with you and your show. They've made a conscious decision, and they can.
And they often spend longer listening to it, much longer than they would on your website. And for us personally, we have more people, quite a lot more people, listen to our podcast than read our blog posts or go to our website.
Probably about double, isn't it? I would say.
Probably about double, the number of downloads we get a month to the number of visitors to our website.
And podcasting is in different formats, as I'm sure you know. There's obviously the short or as long as you want, but in the long form, in terms of a business, how often would you have an opportunity to talk to somebody individually for upwards of an hour, when they're out walking, in the car, when they're commuting, on a run, or at the gym? It's a really convenient form of taking in information, and long or short form. Waxing lyrical, I am indeed.
I think Craig might be taking the mickey a little.
Probably, he said he was going to.
He said he was going to give us some heckling. Yeah, so there's been many, many fantastic things. And for us, we're here in our little office in Suffolk, in a little market town in Suffolk, and we now have listeners in 168 countries around the world, which is, to us, is just sort of quite mind-blowing.
We would never be able to have got that degree of penetration to 169 countries.
No, I don't think so. And the other thing is, it's not just about numbers and everything. And, our numbers are nothing compared with a lot of the big business podcasts. I know that Johnny Dumas coming on. And like the Pat and Chris and all that. Our numbers are not going to compete with them. But in a way, that doesn't matter. We still get thousands of people listening to us every month
specifically
from
about
around
the subject
the world.
we're talking about as well, isn't it?
And really, it's more about talking to the right people than talking to masses of people. And of course, that's not to say we wouldn't like to be more people, because we would, but because it enables you to get your message out more. But that it's, especially depending on what your podcast is about, it's not always a numbers game. And I think that's really important. I know that from Podcast Divas, because my numbers on Podcast Divas are minuscule compared to what we get on the Changeability podcast.
Small but perfectly formed.
Because obviously it's a much more smaller niche of people, who are going to be maybe interested in, especially women, or hearing women's stories about podcasting, although listen to them, because some of them are great. So there's a lot that I would say.
So really, we're talking about the medium here, aren't we? In terms of the medium being a really convenient form, and it does allow for a longer attention span than perhaps something like reading a blog. Although we might notice our viewers plummeting in a second on this.
After this.
What about the message? Should we talk a little bit about the message?
Well, I think the thing about podcasting is you can be really flexible in how you get your message out. And it's like we said before, we talked about sort of rules, but there really are no rules.
Very few rules, aren't there?
And you can use storytelling, you can use reporting, you can use reviewing, you
entertaining, informing.
You can use this
infusing,
audience generated
comedy
stuff like Answer Me That, with very popular podcast here. So yeah, there's so many different things you can do, and so many different ways you can do it to get your message away. I'm just looking at the time, Julian, so I'm thinking maybe we should just move on a bit to just think about if you were to be starting a podcast yourself, or if you already started, because I think some of the really key questions for us and that we would say to people to think about when they're thinking about starting a podcast is really, is podcasting right for me? And the reason why we're saying this is because it gives an opportunity to talk about a little bit about some of our experiences as well. And
the first thing I think would probably be to say it does require considerable commitment, doesn't it?
Yeah, so to be realistic about it, that's what I would say. None of this is to put anyone off, because as you can tell, we're passionate about it.
Yeah, definitely so. But it does require a consistent, we said we'd do the good, the bad and the ugly, and I don't want it just, as Craig said, just waxing lyrical. But also it does require a degree of consistency. We, with the Changeability podcast, we've taken a break after 100 episodes, but we, before that, other than one Christmas, which we took a week off, we produced a consistent schedule of one show per week right throughout that particular time, didn't we? Yeah, and obviously a lot of it depends on the sort of show that you're thinking, which is, you know, one of the questions you need to ask yourself: what sort of show do I want, or an interview, or whatever. But for us, because most of our shows aren't interview shows, they require quite a lot of research. Yes. We have a rough script, not as in everything written out, but as we have a rough running order, don't we? Because there's two of us, and because I want to make sure that Julian talks about what I want us to talk about. I don't go off the message. You know, I will do quite a lot. If I'm doing it, which I probably do like 70% of the scripts, then I will do quite a lot of bullet points about the things that I'd like us to cover. And all of that actually takes quite a long time. And we got to the point, especially if we do, sometimes we do a few special things, like we might have put a little bit of drama in, or a little bit of, I don't know, you love playing around with your sound effects. Sounds, yeah, things like that. Well, I think it brings to life. I think podcasting is a medium which you can bring to life. You can't necessarily afford huge budgets, but you can bring to life through the power of sound, can't you? Yeah. So what we're saying is, we found that it's taking a lot of our time, and some days, some weeks, it would even take like 2 to 3 days of our time between the two of us. So be aware of the commitment, really. Yeah, and of course it depends on the time, and we do all our own editing work. When I say we, I mean Julian. Julian does our editing, and I do the notes and all that sort of thing, which sometimes are quite lengthy. So you've got to be careful, I think, a little bit of whether or not, just as you're being realistic about, is podcasting right for me, about whether or not you can get into a scenario where the podcasting tail wags the dog. So it becomes, it takes up a more of a time than you need it to take up for your overall business development. Now, obviously there are ways around this. You can, but all of this is partly money dependent, so you can get obviously people to edit your shows, do your own scripts, your own show notes. So there are those things which you can do as well along the way. But be aware that those things do take time. And the other thing I would say is, what might be exciting to do editing, for example, of your own show, when you get to episode 100, perhaps you've lost some of that enthusiasm for editing which you might have had in the first 10 to 20. That's not to decry it in any way, but just to be realistic about that. And one way which sometimes people get round that is that they will talk about podcasting in terms of series. So they might have a particular series, a series one, which might concentrate on a particular area of their work, and then they might take breaks between that to give them time to focus on it. So it's a good idea to have some sort of idea of where you're going in terms of your ultimate aim, your ultimate business aims. Yeah, so for us, what we're doing at the moment, we got to our 100th episode, and we decided to take, that was earlier this summer, and we decided to take a few weeks break because
we're in the process of putting together the Changeability Success Club, which is going to be like an online community and club for what we do. So we really felt
Bless
that
we
wanted to take. Oh, thank you, Craig. I was just thinking we haven't put any links in here. We should be putting links in here. So we wanted to be able to take a few weeks to focus on that. But having said that, I did a couple of episodes, a couple of interviews last week, and it was really great to get back to talking. They're not gone live yet, but they will do soon. And like today has been really great. So I think we are sort of itching to get back to it, but know at the same time that we're trying to make the balance. That's the only thing I'd say. It's about getting the balance, and it also depends why you're doing it. A lot of it. It's about being clear about why you're doing it. It might just be for fun, in which case that's great, isn't it?
We're in the process of creating a membership area, which is going to be around our Changeability theme, and it's going to be called the Changeability Success Club. So we're trying to develop that and give ourselves time to actually concentrate on that. The next thing maybe about what is the podcast for. When you're thinking about podcasting for the first time, we've got about 8 minutes left.
No, we haven't, because finish in 3 minutes.
3 minutes? Oh my goodness. This is your 3-minute call.
3-minute call.
I feel I'm at the Labour Party conference. You get the red light.
Yeah. So, so we need to start thinking about wrapping it up now. I mean, there seriously is a lot more we could have talked about, of course, but hopefully we've given you a bit of a flavour about podcasting in the UK. We're growing here. We're doing well. We like it. A bit of a flavour of our 2 podcasts, which you can find obviously in all the normal places, but you can also get them. Craig has put very, very kindly put up the link to our Changeability podcast, which is on our Brilliant Living HQ.
Thank you, Artan DC, for your
Podcast Divas is
comments.
At podcastdivas.com, and you can also find them on iTunes and Stitcher and tune in. And you can find us on Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff, basically Instagram. You know all this.
Have you just ended the show?
Yeah, I feel like I am getting towards the end, because I'm just suddenly thinking, if I come up here and we don't mention any of this, we'll think, we should have mentioned it. But I just want to say that it's been a real pleasure talking to you today. And it's a little bit weird because we're used to just having people hear us and not be able to see us. So. But
I feel a little bit split because I've been sort of trying to look at the comments at the same time. So if I look, I'm always looking outside of the screen. Will Sinclair, podcaster, we appreciate you as well.
Thank you so much for all your comments. It's been fantastic knowing that there are some people there listening to us. And we think we need to hand back to Dave or Steve now. But thank you for listening. Keep up the great work. We're looking forward to hearing some more from some other people.
Do stay around for the next up, which is the creation of a podcast network. Epiphany to Entertainment with Jason Bryant. What a fantastic name.
Jason Bryant. My name's Kathryn Bryant. What a great surname you've got.
What a wonderful session, you two. Wow.
Oh, bless you.
I hope it's been of use.
Well, every once in a while you pull 4 aces out of the deck, and that's what you just did, and we certainly appreciate that.
Oh, bless you for that. Thank you very much indeed. We really enjoyed it. I'm sorry we had Kathryn kept on pulling me over to sort of cuddle up to her, but I feel very cramped when I've been like this. Just been in your window, so if I've been out of the window, my apologies.
Well, you can go take a nice long walk now.
We're going to have a cup of tea.
You already had one.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you
can never have too much tea.
No,
we are English, Oh, great, of course.
And well done to you both as well for putting this on. What a fabulous achievement to pull this all together. It must be amazing. And
Jason,
you must
we
be
met at NMX.
well exhausted, I suspect, by what you've done so far. You're still only halfway through, but well done to all that as well.
Thank you.
But the podcasting energy keeps you rolling. That's what it's all about.
Thank you. Bless you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dad.